Tim Kurkjian, thank you very much for being with us tonight. And Gabe Sinicropi, thank you for your part. You've worked with Tim at the Hot Stove Banquets in Williamsport, and it's good that you're joining us to work with Tim tonight. So, Gabe, I'm going to turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Jack, yeah, thank you very much. Tim and I are thinking about taking our act on the road soon, so be looking for us. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this special meeting of our Williamsport chapter of SABR. Tonight, of course, we are just so honored to be joined by Hall of Famer Tim Kurkjian, baseball analyst for ESPN. And as Jack said, I hope you have some great questions because Tim, at his request, most of our time tonight will be spent answering your questions. So if you have a question for Tim, we invite you to start submitting them via the chat function on your screen. We'll get to as many questions as time will allow. But first, a little background on our special guest, Tim Kurkjian. He started his career as the Texas Rangers beat writer for the Dallas Morning News, where he worked from 1981 to 1985. He covered the Baltimore Orioles for the Baltimore Sun starting in 86. He was a senior writer for Sports Illustrated from 89 to 97, a master storyteller. If you've heard him, you know. He began his career at ESPN in 1998 and serves as a Major League Baseball analyst on ESPN's Baseball Tonight and Sports Center. Tim was named the 2022 Baseball Writers of America Career Excellence Award winner, presented annually at the Baseball Hall of Fame induction ceremonies to a writer for meritorious contributions to baseball writing. What that means is Tim Kurkjian is a Baseball Hall of Famer. He's annually part of ESPN's coverage of the Little League Baseball World Series and the MLB Little League Classic, all here in Williamsport, of course. He's authored 3 books on baseball and co-hosts a weekly podcast called Is This a Great Game or What? With his son, Jeff. Without further ado, we welcome Mr. Tim Kurkjian. Tim, the floor is yours, my friend.
Well, thank you, Gabe, and thanks for everyone for joining us. And I mean this as the greatest compliment. All you guys and girls, women in SABR are completely out of your minds. I just love every one of you for being like this. Please don't ever change with the research that you do and your love of the sport. Baseball is the greatest game. We all know that. And it lends itself to amazing statistics and great stories far more than the other sports do. I got into SABR thanks to my father. Everything I've ever done is thanks to my father, Jeff, who was a really good player in his day, and he taught his 3 boys how to play the game. He taught us how to love the game. He gave us a great feel for the game. My 2 brothers, Matt and Andy, are in the Baseball Hall of Fame at Catholic University. My oldest brother, Andy, might be the best player ever to play at that school. So this was the primary language spoken in my house growing up. And my dad was also a PhD in mathematics, MIT undergrad. So my fascination with numbers comes directly from him. When we weren't playing as little kids, I was sitting with my dad with the baseball encyclopedia on our laps, and he was showing me things that I still use today. I knew at age 7 that Joe DiMaggio hit 361 homers and only struck out 369 times. I still use that number today. This was the impact that my father had on me, and it has been just the greatest career ever for me, 45 years of covering baseball, and what a week we have ahead. We finished what I think was the greatest World Series ever, at least the greatest one I've ever covered. That was last year. The WBC was absolutely fabulous on every level. And a week from today, we're going to have the full first opening day. I can't wait for this. It's going to be the greatest. And Jack, thanks so much for having me here. Jack, I did not know that you went to Fordham.
Yes.
So let me quickly tell you that when I covered the Orioles, they had a pitcher named Pete Harnish, who we all know. Pete Harnish was a fire hydrant of a pitcher, threw hard, great guy. He went to Fordham. He told me once when he was at Fordham, he used to make a little extra money on the side by appearing in police lineups. So he said, I get $25 for a regular case $50 for a murder case. You don't hear that too often from major league players. So, Jack,
Yeah.
it's so good to be a part of you guys tonight. And I am here to answer any question that you like about whatever. Just understand, I don't know anything other than baseball, basketball, and sitcoms from the 60s. So please don't ask me anything other than that because I can't answer it. I promise you. But as for anything else, just fire away. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, so let's get those questions in for Tim in the chat. Tim, first off, that is from our buddy Jamie Foster. What's the one thing you wish you would have done earlier in your career, and one thing you would recommend not doing?
Well, the first thing I would have done is I would have learned how to speak Spanish because I took French in high school and college. And now that Russell Martin has retired, I don't have anyone to talk to. I have the worst French accent in the world, but I actually spoke French for a couple minutes with Russell Martin a few years ago. 33% of the players speak Spanish. I can't speak one word of it. So that would be the one thing that I would have changed is I would have taken Spanish in high school and college so I can at least have a working knowledge of the players today. It really hurts me seriously that I can't carry on a conversation in Spanish with anybody. And that's really a shame because it's such a Latino game now. And we saw from the WBC how important those players are to the game. So that would be the thing that I would change. And what was the second part of that, Gabe?
It was one thing that you would recommend not doing, maybe that you did.
Well, I would not listen to Doug Rader. That's what I would recommend not doing. Doug Rader.
What terrible advice did he give you?
Well, Doug Rader is one of my favorite people in the world, and he was the mischievous manager of the Texas Rangers when I covered the team in 1983-84 when he was there. And Larry Parrish, the everyday right fielder for the Rangers, missed a game in Minneapolis one night because his wife had a baby. So I'm covering the team. So I put in the Ranger notes, Larry Parrish missed the game because his wife had a baby. So I said to Doug Rader, okay, what's the baby's name? And he said, the baby's name is Buford. So I said, come on, Doug, I know you're a kidder. No one names their son Buford. I hope I don't offend anyone there. So he said, his name is Buford. I said, Doug, he said, I swear on my mother's grave, his name is Buford. So I put it in the paper the next day that Larry Parrish missed a game because his wife had a baby boy, Buford. So Larry Parrish comes to the ballpark the next day in Minneapolis, walks right up to me and says, Kirk, his name ain't Buford. His name was Joshua. He went by JP for most of his life. But the kicker is whenever he got in trouble with his parents, like when he was 10 or 12, they would always say, Buford, you know better than that. So somehow I got roped into misnaming the son of Larry Parrish. It was so embarrassing. I'll never listen to Doug Rader again because he's far too mischievous for my words.
Well, from Mike Lundy, who is ironically one of the team hosts at the Little League World Series, a team uncle, he wants to know that, I'll paraphrase what I think he was trying to say. We hear from, all of you guys from ESPN and ABC who are here during the World Series that they love coming here and that they come back over and over. What is it about this event and having this assignment that makes it so great?
Well, it's a magical venue is what it is. And until you've been here, you have no idea TV just does not do it justice. Joe Madden came here for the first time several years ago, and he grew up in Pennsylvania, and he had never been to Williamsport. He got into the ballpark and was absolutely dazzled. He said, I had no idea that this tremendous ballpark, this field, Lamity Field, was at the bottom of a mountain. He had no idea. Tito Francona, who grew up in Western Pennsylvania, had never been to Williamsport. And when he came to ESPN for 1 year in 2012, he wrote it into his contract, I have to cover the Little League World Series. And he had the time of his life. As he told me, he said, this is where baseball meets the county fair. What a perfect description of what Williamsport is. And I make sure, since I've covered this thing every year for the last 10 years, that I talk to every coach that I can about what it's like to be here and what it's like the first time they come in the park. I talked to a coach last year who told me he did not sleep literally at all the first 2 nights because he just sat out on a lawn chair and looked down at the field thinking, we're going to play baseball here tomorrow and we're going to play here all week. That's what Williamsport does. It's just, ludicrously charming around the ballpark. It's the greatest venue in the world. Carl Ravitch told me when I first did this 10 years ago, he said, this will be the best event you've ever covered. And I said, Ravi, I can't imagine how that can be true. And he was absolutely right. And let's also be clear, they send me there every year for 2 reasons, for scale and context, because I'm basically the same size as all the players are. In fact, one year, one of our researchers looked up that 52% of the Little League players that year were taller than me. So I'm not sure that's anything to be happy about. I thought it was uncalled for that someone would do that kind of research, but it was hilarious. And I love, love, love Williamsport.
I feel your pain on the height issue, Tim, of course. I think I can add, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, but the other reason, besides what a great event it is that it's not very often that you have an assignment where you go somewhere and you're there for a while. I mean, I could think of the Olympics, things of that nature. Most of these guys, especially the crew and everybody really, are used to coming in, doing the event, getting out, and, setting up, taking it down, all in, 36 hours. But here you come in, you set up, and you kind of camp out for almost 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's great. And I can drive there because I live in Maryland. So I've got my own car. I stay in the same hotel for 10 days or so. It's absolutely tremendous. The people at Franco's actually know all of us now. There's like a secret door knock that you have to make at Franco's to get in
That's right.
during Little League World Series week. But once we show up, they let us in. It's the greatest food in the world. So there is nothing bad to be said about Williamsport, only great things.
Harold Houston, Jack, that's your brother, right? So he wants to know, do you ever think we'll see Major League Baseball in Cuba?
I think we have a long way to go there. I went to Cuba several years ago when the Tampa Bay Rays went and played an exhibition game there. And wow, what an experience that was. I, of course, had never been to Cuba before, and we were treated like gold no matter where we were there. But when I got back from Cuba, and we had a great time there, when I got back, Jonas Cespedes, who is Cuban, of course, and I had never spoken to, because I repeat, I don't speak Spanish, came up to me and said, did you get out into the country at all? Did you leave? I said, I went to Cuba. I said that to him. He said, did you leave the city? And I said, well, no, we were there the whole time. And he goes, well, you didn't see Cuba then, meaning where we were, everyone was taken care of. It was an amazing place. I'll never forget, though. At the end of the day, when we were leaving, there were a bunch of old trash bags there that they had used to put dirt on the field and things like that. And the kids working there grabbed all those plastic bags and took them home because they might actually have a use for something like that. Here, of course, we would throw every one of those bags in the trash, but those poor kids didn't have anything. And bringing an extra plastic bag home meant something to them. And then somebody gave them a package of baseball cards, like 5 of these kids. It was like giving them $1 million. So, it just showed exactly how difficult things are in Cuba. Therefore, my guess is we're not going to have a major league team there anytime soon. I hope I'm wrong, because that was a beautiful country, at least the places that I went.
Questions coming in right over in the chat. You can ask Tim anything, mainly about baseball or 60s sitcoms or basketball. This question from Dixie, Tim, when was your first MLB game? I would imagine the first game you covered.
Well, the first game I covered was in Baltimore. I'm going to have to say a bad word here, but I was covering the Orioles, and Dan Shaughnessy, Hall of Fame baseball writer, was our main beat writer at the Washington Star. I was his backup, and he took me to Memorial Stadium to meet a bunch of the players, because I was going to start to do a little bit of work covering the Orioles. So he introduces me to Earl Weaver for the first time. This is Earl Weaver, one of the greatest managers of all time, a guy who eventually taught me more about baseball than anyone I've ever met. I love Earl Weaver with all my heart. But the first time I met him, Dan introduced him to me and said, "Earl, this is Tim. He's going to be covering some of the games this year." And Earl looks at me and says, "Fuck you, Tim," and walks away. And I went, "Oh my God." I almost started to cry right there on the field. And Dan says, "Oh, that's what he says to all of the people that he really likes." And I said, "Really likes? I just met him 3 seconds ago. How can he determine if he likes me or not?" So that's how I met Earl Weaver. But I stand corrected. I did go to Philadelphia before that, and I wrote a story. I went there to write a story on Pete Rose. I'll never forget this. Pete Rose, there was this is like 1980, and there was a rain delay in Philadelphia that night, and they restarted the game. Cold, rainy, awful, at like 1:30 in the morning. And there were like 40 people left in the stands, but the writers were all still there. And Pete Rose, who was like 40 years old at the time, he singled to start the inning, stole second, stole third, scored on a fly ball, and won the game at like 1:45 in the morning. It was like everyone wanted to go home except for him. So that's when I learned who Pete Rose was, at least as a baseball player on the field.
From Bill Marston, Tim, what is your next book, and when is it coming out?
Yeah, I've written 3 books. I want to write several more, but I've been a little bit busy with work and everything, and I've got 4 grandchildren now, and a 5th one on the way. And I've really used it to become pop. 3 of my grandchildren live 8 minutes from our house, so I see them every day. So I am definitely going to write when I get 50 years in the business. That is probably another 4 to 5 years that I will definitely write a book, maybe not my memoirs, but 50 years covering baseball. Hopefully I will have 50 at that point. That will be a book for sure, but hopefully I'm going to write something else before then. But given my very, very busy personal schedule, not to mention work schedule, I have to find the perfect time to write a book, because I can't rush it, and I can't allow it to run into the baseball season where I'm trying to write a book and cover baseball at the same time.
Well, I've read all 3 of Tim's books, so I can definitely say, if you haven't, if you like listening to Tim's stories, the books are awesome. So check them out. You can find them in lots of places. Dixie is where I asked about your first MLB game. I guess we misinterpreted, or she typed. She really wants to know your first baseball game as a kid.
Yeah, well, I'm sure I went to Griffith Stadium as a kid with my father, because we lived in Bethesda, Maryland, outside of DC Stadium, Griffith Stadium. But I certainly don't remember that. But I do remember when I was about, I would say, 5 years old, I went to Fenway Park with my dad and my 2 brothers. He grew up in Watertown, Mass, a suburb of Boston, as a big Red Sox fan. So I remember going to Fenway. Felix Mantilla hit a home run in like the 2nd inning, and it was like the coolest thing ever that I was at Fenway Park at age 5. and Felix Mantilla, Felix the Cat, we used to call him, hit a home run. So I remember that vividly. I'm sure I went to a game or two before then, but that's the one that stands out the most for me, is sitting with my dad and my mom and my two brothers at historic Fenway Park, and Felix Mantilla hit a home run.
I think we saw somebody who's here from a mile away from Fenway Park who's in this Zoom with us, so we welcome them. Here's one that, well, I'm going to just prepare myself now to be sad. What's your best guess on the 2027 season? Are we in for a long lockout?
Yeah, I'm really discouraged right now. Now, I'm an optimist by nature, so I am going to hold out hope that everyone is going to recognize there is way too much money in the game right now to be lost, and that cooler heads are going to prevail, and we're going to get and play the entire 2027 season. However, at the moment, I am deeply discouraged. I had somebody who probably would know tell me he's never seen the two sides this far apart with the deadline looming like this. And even though it's 9 months away, we're not even close on anything right now. The two sides have tremendous acrimony. There's a gigantic gap between the two. The owners seem determined to get a salary cap. The union, as we know, is just not going to allow that. So my guess for now is there will be a work stoppage next year. It could wipe out the entire season, but the optimistic nature in me says somebody has to say, we can't allow this to happen. This is what Tom Glavine did in 1995. One of the leaders of the players, he stood up and said, in 2000, we can't allow 94, 95 to happen again. That has to go on. Owners have to stand up and say, we can't let this happen again. Baseball will survive anything because it's the greatest game ever. But another work stoppage at this point, with all the momentum baseball has right now, would be devastating.
I'm going to follow up that question a little bit, Tim. If you could enlighten us, I think it's December 1st, right? Is
yes.
When the CBA is officially done. So if there is a lockout starting December 1st, in the off season, what does that mean?
Well, it pretty much shuts everything down. No free agent signings, no trades, no winter meetings. It's like the industry closes and is shut until the owners open it back up. And, we all know that the Hot Stove League is a very important part of the game. People love it. Winter meetings is fascinating. Signings, trades, everything else. So the game just kind of shuts down as of December the 1st until an agreement is reached. And that's why I repeat, we have to get something done. Fellas, girls, women, I covered the 81 strike. That was 45 years ago, and we're still fighting about the same things. We have to get to a point where we can figure out the haves and the have-nots. We have to figure out where all this money can go and make everyone happy. But right now, we're not in a good spot.
From Jamie Foster, we know, Tim, you're doing your dream job, but if you had to select another non-sports job, what would it be, or what would it have been?
Well, again, I'm a pretty narrow-minded fellow. Like I said, baseball was the primary language in my house growing up. And when we weren't playing baseball, we were playing basketball, or we were watching Get Smart on TV, and that's about all that I know. To answer your question, I guess I would be a teacher. My father was a professor, taught at the University of Alabama after 35 years in the government. My older brother, Matt, was a math teacher, baseball coach. My brother, Andy, taught for a while. So I come from a long line of teachers. All of them were way smarter than me, by the way. So I'm not sure I would be a great teacher, but that's about the only thing that I think I would be even qualified to do, because I've never done anything else. I mean, I worked at a playground when I was in high school, like teaching the kids how to play softball and basketball. I was an umpire, and I was a writer. That's all I've ever done. I never worked at McDonald's. I never had like a real job. But so I'm totally unqualified to do anything. But maybe with all I've learned as a journalist, maybe I could go teach journalism at a high school or something like that. If it's not involving in sports, I'm not very good.
Lon Hildreth, should the steroid guys like Bonds and Clemens be in the Hall?
Well, I voted for Bonds and Clemens every year they were eligible. 10 years, I voted for them every year. And I'm not even suggesting I was right or that was an easy decision, because it wasn't. But to me, there was a tacit agreement back then that nobody's checking, nobody's testing, there are no penalties, there's no punishment. The trainers and the managers are encouraging players to try this. All sorts of guys were doing it, and it was running rampant. So I just don't think it's right to just single out Clemens and Bonds and say you don't belong in the Hall of Fame, when I think there are steroid users in the Hall of Fame. I'm not positive about that, but I voted for them. And in the final year, they got 65% of the vote. Of course, you have to get 75%. They've been on, Bonds and Clemens have now been on two different, special committee ballots. And I've been on four of those committees in my career. 16 people in the room, 8 of them former players. And trust me, they're going to have a lot harder time getting in through a special committee than they did with the writers. So they're already 0 for 2. They might only have one more shot at this. So there is a chance that, 20 years from now, maybe even more, we're still asking the same question. Will Bonds and Clemens get into the Hall of Fame? We're in a similar spot to where that is right now.
Don Larson, I'm going to say the other Don Larson, the WBC has grown so much. Do we really need a Major League Baseball All-Star game?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I've covered every All-Star game since '81, and I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a celebration of baseball. It's a great chance to get everyone together, and the players have a great time, home run derby, all of that. Let's be clear, they're really not interested in who wins and loses the game. This isn't Pete Rose in the 70s greeting guys at the door of the NL clubhouse saying, we're going to beat that American League team again this year. It doesn't work that way. Guys don't play all 12 innings of an All-Star game like they did in the 40s and the 50s. Doesn't work that way. But I still think we need it. And this is an interesting debate, but I think the WBC, there is no perfect time to play it. But I think March is the best time to play it because the players are fresh from the winter. Nobody's dragging yet. Nobody's injured yet. If we start to play the WBC during the All-Star break, now you have to take star players away from their teams in the middle of a pennant race when some of them are already beaten up and exhausted. So I think we should keep it where it is right now. I think this is the best place and the best time for the WBC.
All the baseball books that have been written, Tim, do you have a favorite?
Well, Ball 4 was really the first book that I read when I was old enough to understand what I was reading. So, yeah, that is my favorite baseball book. I have read it multiple times, and Jim Bouton just, changed the way we write about baseball. So I have a few others, to say the least. David Halberstam wrote a couple of great books, and Peter Gammons and Dan Shaughnessy, two of my dear friends, have written great books on baseball. But I'll have to start with Jim Bouton and Ball 4 because that kind of got it started for me.
It is a cool book. If you're an old time baseball fan and you haven't read Ball 4, find it somewhere and read it. It's a lot of fun. Another question from Dixie. Dixie's the guy who's a mile from Fenway. And speaking of Peter Gammons, Tim, Peter Gammons is his friend. What does Peter mean to you as a sports writer, and what has he meant to baseball over all these years?
Yeah, Peter is, for me, the greatest baseball writer of all time. He is a dear friend. He taught everyone how to cover baseball. He was the one that essentially started the Sunday Notes column, which we all wrote, all because of him. He taught us how to write game stories, how to write running. He taught us how to bring pop culture and musical references into our game stories. And there has never, ever been a harder working guy than Peter Gammons. I'll never forget. I'm covering the Rangers. I'm the beat guy. I know everything about my team because that's the only thing I'm covering, the Texas Rangers. I called Peter one day. This is 1984, let's say, and I say, Peter, the Rangers are making a trade today. I know it. I can feel it. I just can't figure out what they're doing. And he says, oh, later today, they're going to get Cliff Johnson from Toronto. And later that day, they got Cliff Johnson from Toronto. And so Peter Gammons, the beat writer for the Boston Red Sox, knew my team better than I did. And I was just dazzled that he could know, like off the top of his head, this is what your team is doing later today. And a few years ago, I went to the Braves clubhouse in spring training, and I've got my spring training pass around my neck. And I go to the elderly guy who is guarding the door for the Braves clubhouse. And I start to show him my pass. And he says, you don't need to show me your pass. I've been reading you and watching you for decades. Peter, it's great to see you. So he thought I was Peter Gammons. So I was I laughed out loud, but I was so flattered because in any way, if I could be compared to Peter Gammons, there is no greater compliment as a writer.
You're both amazing. And my Peter Gammon story is after, I don't know, 30 some winter meetings. I mean, that's the guy you see the most out of thousands of people at the winter meetings. You see Peter Gammons every single place that you go 20 times a day. He's everywhere all the time.
Right. As Bob Ryan, his colleague, who's basically the commissioner of basketball, once said, I have never met anyone who loves anything as much as Peter Gammons loves baseball. And that kind of sums it all up.
Jim wants to know, who do you think is going to be in the World Series this fall?
Wow, another chance to be dead wrong like I am every year. But yes, I'll give it a shot. I just saw the Dodgers in Arizona, and I know that they are loaded like I've never seen a Dodger team loaded before. Keep in mind, last 6 years, they've won 3 championships and had a winning percentage of .630. The last team to win 3 championships and have a winning percentage that high for a 6-year period was the Yankees 1953 to 58. We are watching a dynasty, and the Dodgers are better now than they've been during this run. Remember, 2 years ago, they won the World Series without a starting rotation. This year, 2025, they won the World Series without a bullpen. And now they've upgraded their bullpen. Their starting rotation, when healthy, is loaded. Their everyday lineup is ridiculous. So I'm going to say the Dodgers are going to play in the World Series. The American League has about 6 teams that I'm comfortable saying they got a chance. But I saw the Mariners recently, and their starting pitching is just so good. They've added a little punch with with some people in their offense. Brendan Donovan's really going to help them. I really like the Mariners more than any team in the American League, but the Blue Jays are pretty darn good. I saw the Yankees, I saw the Red Sox, I saw Detroit. It's going to be a very interesting American League, but I think one of those teams will play the Dodgers in the World Series.
Fearless leader Jack Houston wants to know, Tim, about the ABS system. So first, can you explain the rule? The automated balls and strikes?
Yes, you get 2 challenges per game, and a hitter, if he thinks it's a ball, can tap his helmet, meaning I'm challenging this, and they'll go to replay very quickly. And if he's right, they don't lose the challenge. If he's wrong, they lose the challenge. Same thing with a pitcher or a catcher. And most teams are telling their catcher to make the call here as opposed to the pitcher, since the catcher is right there. I saw a note the other day, JT Real Muto is like 5 for 5 on challenges this year. So Look, I'm almost 70 years old, so I'm not big on change. I'm certainly not big on technology. It takes me forever to figure out how to get onto a Zoom chat. So I'm a little bit worried that too much technology is going to overcome the game. And I had a manager tell me this spring, he said, I'm willing to give this a chance, but he said, I'm worried that the strategy that you have to use in challenging is going to become sometimes more important than the actual play on the field. And I just don't think that is the spirit of this. Other managers have said, yeah, this is worth a try. Let's see. Personally, I would like to have given it another year in the minor leagues, another year during the All-Star game to make sure we absolutely perfect this thing. I don't think it's going to slow the game down dramatically. I certainly hope not. But I'm skeptical a little bit. I'm willing to give it a try, but we have to recognize if it's not working, we got to get rid of it and try something better.
It will be interesting to see how the strategy develops with that. And you're right, Tim. It is virtually instantaneous. So it won't slow the game down. But as you said, we'll see what happens moving forward after this year. Jim Scott, does the MLB Draft League, which the Crosscutters are in, make sense, or should they go back to Single A? I could answer that too for you, Jim.
Well, Gabe, if it's okay, Gabe, I think you should answer that. I'm no expert on minor league baseball. I covered minor league baseball 79, 80. It was the greatest experience of my life. I understood what that was all about. And I covered a co-op team and I covered the Mariners Class A team. It was fascinating, all of it. But I'm not sure I have the correct answer here, Gabe. You do this for a living. Tell
Well,
us.
this is Tim's night, so I'm going to be really quick here, Jim. And for everybody, the same thing I tell everybody is there will never be, never with a capital NEVER, affiliated baseball in Williamsport again. That has passed places like Williamsport by, unless anybody here or anywhere has about $50 million for a new stadium. With all the things that are necessary now to have a minor league team there affiliated. So that said, the MLB Draft League is the new place for Williamsport in the new world, and it is a new world of baseball. With Major League Baseball taking over the minor league. So this is our other choice is not to have baseball, and that would be a horrible, horrible outcome. So know that the Draft League is a great place for our organization. But thanks for the question. Tom Tracy, what's your favorite ballpark, past or present?
Again, I'm almost 70 years old, so Fenway is my favorite. It opened in 1912. My father grew up in Watertown. First game I ever went to that I can remember was at Fenway Park. I grew up to stories of Ted Williams and Lefty Grove and Jimmy Fox. And every time I go in that ballpark, and I don't care how corny this sounds, I think Ted Williams played left field right there. And Babe Ruth pitched on that mound right there. And that means something to me. 1982, by the way, I was covering the Rangers, and we had a game at Fenway on Old Timers Day. And Ted Williams comes out. There are Hall of Famers all over the field. Bobby Dorr, they're all catching fly balls. And here comes Ted for batting practice. My father's baseball hero. And I'm standing right next to the cage. I am 10 feet away from the batting cage. Ted takes his jacket off, and he's like 60 years old at the time. He gets in and he digs in just like it was 1941. His setup, his stance looked exactly like everything that I saw on video and everything that my father told me. First pitch of batting practice comes in, and Ted Williams hits a missile that takes one hop and bounces into the bullpen in right center field, which would have been an automatic double. I was 10 feet away, and I saw Ted Williams hit an absolute seed to right center field. And after batting practice was over, I called my dad and I said, Pop, I just saw Ted Williams hit. It's just like you told me it was. And it was absolutely breathtaking. So that kind of history that goes on in that ballpark, and every time you look around, you see things in there that are so historic. That's why it's my favorite ballpark still.
Well, Tim, our time is winding down. We only have a couple of minutes. This year, for 2026, the TV landscape for baseball is different, and for your employer, ESPN. So let's start there. What night or what's ESPN's baseball schedule, and more importantly, when can we see you?
Well, that's a good question on both. We used to have Sunday night baseball for 35 years. Now we're going to have a game on a certain Monday night or a certain Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe a Saturday. It all depends on when these games are going to be on. We only have one game on until the beginning of May. Only one, and that's Jackie Robinson Day at Dodger Stadium, Mets and Dodgers. I will be at that game doing baseball tonight, pre and post, but it's going to be a moving target. You just can't say, "Hey, watch the game on Sunday night," because we don't have that anymore. There are games all sorts of days of the week. We'll have about 30 games this year. I'll do some of those games. I will also do baseball tonight for a lot of those games, but it's just not the same setup. I'm not here to complain or argue or be angry because there's no point in it, but it's just not the same as it used to be. But we still have baseball on ESPN, which means I still have a job. Thank goodness.
But there is one Sunday when you are on, and that is August 23rd for the MLB Little League Classic. ESPN still will be carrying that, and we're all very happy about that. So we look forward to seeing you.
And there is nothing better than, when the big leaguers come into the ballpark. I'll never forget when Bryce Harper, when the Phillies were at Williamsport, went to one of the Little League games, and one of the kids from Pennsylvania hit a home run, and Bryce Harper was at the game. So during the classic game that night, that same kid is sitting in the front row at the ballpark, and Bryce Harper is walking to home plate to take a major league at bat, and he looks at that kid and he says, "I hope I hit a ball as hard as you hit that ball today." And then he ended up giving him an autograph bat. I mean, how much better can it get for any kid that you get to talk to a major leaguer, but Bryce Harper walks by and basically says, "I hope I hit it as hard as you did today."
Did you see at the Little League World Series on Classic Day, and the things you see at Journey Bank Ballpark on Classic Day are things that you just don't see anywhere? I saw Anthony Rizzo be in the on-deck circle getting ready to take a regular season at bat, taking a selfie with a kid behind him in the stands. I mean, you don't see that in a major league ballpark ever.
And I saw Jake Arrieta sit in the stands for 45 minutes, surrounded by 12-year-olds, showing all the grips that he uses. This is how I throw my fastball. This is how I throw my slider, my curveball. It was so good that he engaged with those kids, and they were absolutely fascinated by everything that he said. I was also on the bus when the Phillies came in, and Reese Hoskins, this is years ago, got into a dance contest on the bus from the airport to Lamade Stadium with a 12-year-old kid. And I'm sitting right there. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But when the major leaguers become 12 years old again when they go to Williamsport, that is the secret of it.
We love Reese. His first professional season was as a Williamsport Crosscutter. Tim, we can't thank you enough for enlightening us this evening for our SABR chapter here in Williamsport, and taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us tonight. You're the best at what you do. And I did not mention that. Make sure you listen to Tim's podcast every week with his son, Jeff. Is this a great game or what? If you like Tim Kurkjian, if you like the great stories that Tim has, you will love that podcast. So I think, what day do new episodes drop, Tim?
Well, starting next week, we go 3 days a week because it's the first week of the Major League season. We'll have an episode on Monday. We'll have a full interview, 45 minutes or so, on Tuesday, and then we'll have another one on Thursday. So starting next week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and that'll be every week through the World Series.
Great stuff. Tim, thanks so much once again for taking time to be with us this evening. Awesome, awesome, awesome job. So we'll see you in August. And we'll send it.
Absolutely. All
We'll
right.
send it
Hopefully
back
before.
to our main man, Jack Houston. Jack.
So thank you, Gabe, and thank you, Tim. This is Jack Houston saying goodbye. And I welcome everyone to visit Williamsport during Little League Week. Free parking, free admission to the games. And be sure is if you want to visit my wife, Ann Hetzel, and myself, Jack Houston, come over to Union Avenue. And we have some iced tea that we can share and go to the game and come to Williamsport. And also at any time, visit us at our SABR meetings at the James Brown Library. Gabe, thanks for helping. And Tim Kurkjian, this was just an outstanding, beautiful, and a courageous night about the beauty and the essence of baseball in its totality, about what it means in our lives. So we tip our hat, and that's the end of the game. The end of the game, we say goodbye to everybody and we go home. Tim, do you want to say one last word? And I say thank you.
Yeah, just thank you, everyone, all kidding aside, for loving the game as much as you do. You are the backbone of this tremendous game, and I can't even tell you how nice it is on a cold March night here to be talking baseball with people who love the game as much as you do.
Thank you,
TK,
Tim.
thanks, everybody.
All
Thank
right,
you.
see you guys.
See everybody. I'm going to be, I'm the host of the meeting now, and we're at the final 30 seconds of our time that's allowed. And I say goodbye to everybody. And thank you, Gabe, and thank you, Tim, for this wonderful evening. Next week, Major League Baseball starts. New York Yankees at San Francisco Giants, and then it's the earliest start. And let's play baseball. Bye-bye, everyone. Play ball.
Bye,